to, we'd appreciate if you throw it into the chat feature. Scott's going to kind of start collecting some of those questions. And then when we get done with our initial, I say presentation or speaking, then we'll kind of come back and answer some of those questions. So some of you saw this pop up on the STPGA website, or you got an email about it. So let's go over what this is meant to be. So this kind of started as a conversation between Derek, Doug, and myself, actually at last year's Teaching and Coaching Summit at Lakeside, if I remember correctly. And it kind of just started out more of, how can we find a way to get together a little bit more? How can we find a way to actually help create some better synergy and some better education for everybody involved? Okay. So that's kind of where this is kind of come. We started out with a fairly small group of current teachers and coaches that kind of, we wanted to make sure we were on the same page, had kind of some of the same ideas on what we were trying to do. So the plan for these that you see get listed on the website or that you see get emailed to you, they're open to everybody. They're purely a way to try and create some conversation and some better education. My initial thought is it's probably going to be aimed more at that kind of, assistant golf professional, head golf professional, the ones that don't teach and coach full time, but actually in some of our conversations, we're probably realizing that this information is going to be good for everybody, even for those current teachers and coaches. The plan for it to begin with is it's going to be once a month. I'll go over some of the dates that we already have scheduled here in just a moment, but it'll be once a month, and it'll be kind of like you're going to see today. So Derek, Doug, and myself are just going to speak a little bit about a topic. We'll leave some room for questions and answers, and then everybody gets back along their day. We want it to be interactive. The hope for it also is that some of the coaches and some of the assistants and the head pros or whoever may be on these Zoom calls, they get intrigued about something that they've heard, and they go ahead and reach out to maybe the person that presented it or maybe the group that presented it. That's the hope here. These are also going to all be recorded from a standpoint that the STPGA will be posting them, whether it be on the website or even on the YouTube channel. My guess is it's probably a link to the YouTube channel. So you can always come back later and rewatch or go back to a part of a presentation that you want to hear. So right now the plan is to do these via Zoom for a while. We might start thinking about some other ways to do it down the road, but this seems like it's probably going to be the best way to get more people involved. Smaller amount of the day because you don't have driving time and kind of go that way. Now, as of right now, before we get kind of into a couple of people that we'd have to thank, the initial people on this group. So Derek, Doug, Christy Longfield, Rudy Gonzalez, Brian Gathright, Brex Spradley, Greg Hiller. I think we're on that first call from last week. So thank you. And we've since added probably another 25 coaches to that group. So again, we can start creating some content and some ideas of what these sessions are going to look like. So today's the very first one. This is a start. And it might look a little bit chaotic at time, but that's going to be kind of fun as well. And we want any feedback that we can get to try and make these things better for the future. Be critical. We want it. The next session that we're going to have, and Scott Archer will speak a little bit later, November 8th, we have the Teaching and Coaching Summit at Sterling Country Club. So that'll be in person. And then right now, because of the month of December being busy, that December session is actually going to move to November 22nd. If I remember correctly, I think that's the San Antonio group of coaches that's going to take that one on. The next one will be January 17th. I think that's the Austin group that's going to take that on. And then the next one will be February 14th. And as of right now, that's Rudy Gonzalez. So that would be Rudy's in Laredo. All right. I think we're ready. So our topic of the day. So Derek, Doug, and myself are going to kind of take turns telling everybody what we kind of look at, or what we do when we get a new student in, how do we assess what's going on so that we can come up with the best plan of action for that student? Derek or Doug, which one of you want to start?
I'll go for it. How about that? So
Doug.
I think what we originally talked about when Alan and Derek and I got on a call is, how do you start with a new student and where do you start? And that can be a big undertaking. And so all of us really kind of started with having these conversations about that we're all in different type of environments. I'm in an indoor golf academy where we do a lot of indoor technology and outdoor coaching. Alan's got his outdoor school. Derek's got his country club setting. So you have to kind of look at your surroundings and try to figure out how you can offer the best product. But I think before we kind of get into any lesson, it really starts with a phone call for us at GolfTec and myself, is that we call it our pre-evaluation phone call, but it's just an opportunity about 24 to 48 hours to really just call the student. For one, confirm the appointment. Two, we're just going to ask some questions about their game. And then three is just kind of set some expectations of, what to expect for the day. So usually that conversation starts with, tell me why you're seeking out some help with your game. What is going on and why now? Are you looking for help? This allows the opportunity for that student to kind of go and just, exhaust all their information about their game. What I'm looking for in that first phone call with somebody is just what level of play are they at? What's the best they've ever been? What's the worst they've ever been? Areas of struggle and concern that they have. That might be, hey, I really can't keep my T-ball in play. Hey, my lag putting is really poor. Things like that, really trying to kind of get, out of them where their frustrations lie. Because when I find out where the frustrations, then I kind of get this emotional state going on that allows me to be able to kind of understand, well, how can I help this person the most? Because obviously they're really upset about some certain things. Once I kind of get to their areas of concern, then I can kind of start to move into where are your goals? Where do you want your golf game to go? And then also find out a little past history, with other instructors to know kind of where they're coming from. That way I know kind of, maybe either the systems that they've taught under or the coaches they've taught under, was it a good experience or a bad experience? So after I kind of find that background out, then the second part of that call kind of goes into what the expectations are. I think that's important to kind of talk about what to expect, because every lesson with Derek or with Alan or any of you is probably a little different. And so I always kind of, let them know, hey, it's going to be a 90-minute session, for the first one. We're going to take about 20 or 30 minutes and really just evaluate what's going on with all of our technology, understand exactly why they're having the contact problems, the curve problems. We'll have a 30-minute lesson where we kind of take the first piece of the puzzle. And then from there, we'll put a good game plan together in order to get to their goals. That way they really know what to expect. And then finally, at the end of that call, after we've gone through their background, what to expect, I'll bring up cost a little bit just so that the customer doesn't get taken back by maybe sticker shock of what it's going to cost, or, what the expectations are from there. So I think it's okay to talk about that. So I think, for what I'm trying to express is that it's really important to talk to the customer before they walk in for the first time. That way, what their expectation is and they know what yours is. And then that way the environment and the lesson goes really well and it's really healthy.
So I think Doug made an excellent point there, in that the three of us this morning that's speaking have very different situations that we're in. So as a result, our initial evaluation of a student is going to look different. I always feel like whatever facility you're at, it's always being aware of what are the resources you have available and how do you tap into those resources. So being at a private country club without a teaching center at all, my evaluation is going to look very, very different to Doug's, where he's got a whole bunch of technology available to him. So the majority of new students that I see, which I must admit, I don't see a lot of new students who are non-members because I have to look after our membership. But those that are coming to me are usually coming to me because of my new student assessment. And they're reaching out to me because mine's a little different to the majority of coaches out there. So my new student assessment is actually a 9-hole evaluation on the golf course. So when someone reaches out to me, they've seen that. Quite often I'm meeting with players who may never have been on a golf course with their coach before, or it's something they've done very infrequently and they're intrigued by the idea of having their entire game assessed. So they'll reach out to me typically through email. They found me through a Google search or through my website. And I'll send them a form in advance for them to complete. And I'm just looking for some background information. I just want to know, how old they are, how much golf have they played, how much practice are they doing each week, do they have fitted clubs, what do they feel like the strength of their game is, what's the weakness in their game, why are they looking for instruction at the moment, what is their pain point, and what are they trying to accomplish long term, what's their top of the mountain goal. And I also want to know if there's any injury history. So that gives me a little bit of background before we meet. I'll then encourage them to come out a little bit before we meet so they can hit some balls on the range, and then we'll go play 9 holes. So typically they will play on their own. I'd rather them play, and I just walk around and watch them play. I find that by me watching them play puts enough pressure on them that if there's any issues in their game, they're going to break down under the pressure of me watching them. Most of the time, players are nervous enough with someone they've just met, walking around with a clipboard, writing stuff down, that if there's any issues, they're going to show up under that pressure. The only time I would play with them, because I get asked this question a little bit by coaches, is if we're playing in the middle of the field, and I'd be playing solely to slow them down so there's not too much waiting between shots. So if we've got a foursome behind us and a foursome in front, me playing just allows them to slow down a little bit. So I like doing the on-course assessment. It allows me to see, sorry, I'm just reading a quick question. So it's just, so it allows me to see them play every shot from tee to green. I get them to see play from uneven lies, uneven stances. I get to see them hit shots out of the rough. I have found myself that if I meet a player, we tend to just grab it on the range, and we do a range lesson for our first time together. It's too easy to gravitate just towards focusing on full swing. Whereas a lot of the time I find that the full swing may not be ideal, but it's not the weakest link in the chain. And there's other things that we can improve their score faster by getting on the golf course. And by me watching the player play our entire 9 holes, I can figure out what that is. At the end of that time together, we then sit down at the end of it. I talk over the notes that I've taken, ask them, was today a reasonable representation of their golf game? Did they play better or worse today than normal? Try to highlight, well, if we're going to move from where you are now to where you want to go, this is what I see as the highest priority. Make sure that we get agreement between us as to what our highest priority is. And then at the conclusion of that, I take all those notes and I write them all up, and I send them an email outlining what our plan is going to be moving forward. When I send that email, I also send along a contract with our coaching plans, so that student can sign up for how many hours a month and how many months they'd like to sign up for. That's a conversation, as Doug said, so we don't have sticker shock. I do have that conversation when we meet after the round, so that we can talk through that. I don't want to be recommending to a player in a contract that we meet for once a week, when really all they have time to do is twice a month. So that's a conversation we'd have up front. But I do like that. Like I said, I get to see the entire game. And as a result, I'm spending more time on short game and inside 100 yards with players than I have done, in previous teaching.
Awesome. Thank you both. So again, to reiterate, I think because of our facilities, because of our situations and where we coach and teach, our assessments probably look a little bit different. I think it's also the type of player that you're dealing with. I think, as Derek said, being at a private club, he's probably going to have, a wide array of skill as far as player goes. But as most of us know, the average handicap at a club, at a private club, is probably on the higher side. Okay. So I think you also have to allow your evaluations to be based around the type of players you're dealing with. I think, Doug, you probably get a super wide array of players. You get probably some low handicaps that come in there. At our facility, for whatever reason, I don't know why ours kind of looks this way, but our facility tends to have maybe more of that really competitive junior, maybe that kind of competitive mid-am. We've got a few pros that are kind of coming in and out. So we tend to get a few of those better players there. So our assessments look very, very different. And I think one of the things that we're trying to always be careful of is to make sure that we are differentiating what our style preferences are to what is actually going to help somebody get better. Because we get some of those better players that come through there, they will show up with some what we would think is weird looking actions. But we have to be careful not to immediately jump in, throw the wrenches in there, because we might be trying to affect or change something that is actually the reason why they're such a good player. So a lot like Derek, I want to see them in the situation. I want to see them in the environment, if we can. So if we can, the assessment for us would be some sort of conversation of, okay, why are you here? I'm always a little bit scared of their answers of why they're here. Kind of like what Doug said, is sometimes there's a lot of emotion there. They've got some scar tissue built up in one particular area. So we try to take a little bit more of an objective look at it. Maybe, okay, I know why you're here, but let's go take a look at these things. So whether it be taking some initial video, getting some numbers off TrackMan, whether you have, swing catalysts or anything that you can do to gather information. The student doesn't have to see all that information right away. Matter of fact, we try not to show it like immediately. And then I want to go put them in the situations that they feel like they're having an issue with. So if we get one of those better players that comes in, they're usually going to have some sort of miss. And it's usually one miss that they're really not liking. So I want to get on the golf course, or if our golf course is busy enough to where we can't get out there, I'm going to try and simulate that situation as close as possible. Sometimes it's because of where the trouble is. Sometimes it's because of where the pin is. Maybe it's certain winds that bother a player. But it all has to do with their ability to go out there and hit the desired flight that they want, or to be able to hit some sort of predictable flight. So playing a few holes if possible, put them in the situation. We'll come back in. We'll have a conversation, kind of review. Now we'll kind of go in, take a look at the videos. Maybe we look at some of the data that we've pulled together, and then make sure that we're kind of all on the same page of, okay, this is what I see. You've said that you don't like this shot. I noticed that this is what was happening when we got on the golf course. Is that something that we normally see? Yeah, that happens. Okay, here's the plan of action. This is what I think it is. Now, sometimes it could be a technical thing. Sometimes it's they're actually doing what they've been trying to do, and unfortunately, that is part of what's creating the issue. So having those conversations, though, before you jump in there, I think is what the moral of what all of us are trying to do. We're trying to make sure that we have enough information so that we don't just immediately start turning the wrenches and have an opportunity to make somebody worse. When people come in and have new coaches, there's what's the old saying, sometimes you have to get worse to get better. I'm not so sure about that. I don't think you do. I think if you're taking the right objective look at everything and you have information to be able to guide what you're doing, you don't have to get worse. You do not have to get worse. You should be getting better right away and pretty progressively if you have the right information, you have the right goals, you have the right expectations, and then you're also trying to put the right amount of time within those expectations so that you can actually go achieve them. So you can see that our situations may be different, and maybe some of the fine things that we do within our assessment might be different. But I think hopefully the one thing that you see out of all three of us, no matter the facility, is your first scene and assessment. And it doesn't have to do with just 5 minutes of watching them hit balls on the driving range.
Awesome stuff there, Alan. And I think, the message is from all of us is there has to be some type of measurement in order before taking action. I mean, I think the worst lessons are the ones where the guy hits 5 or 6 balls and then you start jumping in there and, throwing commands at him. Taking your time like Derek is and just watching and not saying much. Alan, trying to force those players into a little bit uncomfortable positions that they, are frustrated with, or, us just allowing us to just measure shots when they're hitting, balls, and just, allowing our data to start to kind of collect before we, start going in there. And then for us, we'll go into, once they've hit, a good 20 or 30 shots, then we'll start to kind of go in there and talk a little about what we see mechanically that causes some of their faults, so that they really understand their swing before we ever try to change anything. For us, we want to make sure that they understand, their swing and why it works the way it does before we ever try to, make any change. And then for that, I'll even pull this up. We will a lot of times, and hopefully you can see this, but we'll put like a, whiteboard together of, talking about their kind of frustrations, outlining that for them, really making sure they understand it. We'll go through then and assess their game. And then from there, we basically put a plan together. Here's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of exactly what we want to try to do together. That way they have a good understanding of what we're going to try to do before we change it. And then after we teach them and we kind of give them their first change, then we will actually put a plan together of how to get to their goals, like a sample plan. I'll try to even kind of show, let's see if I could even get it. Might be for us, we might kind of work a little bit on, some indoor technical training, and then we'll do some outdoor assessment, and then we'll do some short game, and then some indoor technical training. We'll do even another playing lesson. And so we're blending kind of outdoor instruction with indoor instruction. And then, helping them kind of have an honest understanding of how long that might take to kind of get to where their ultimate goal might be. So, the idea, I think, just in mind is to have a good idea and plan before you kind of go in there. Because if you just teach them a golf lesson and say, thanks so much, then you might have done more harm than good. But if you have a general plan of where you want to go with that game, that swing and that game, then all of a sudden you get a buy-in from that customer that this might be a little more long-term relationship versus just a one-time transaction.
Yeah, I really like that plan you put together up on the board there, Doug. I think that's a great conversation to have with a new student. I think that too often students come in and we're stuck in a YouTube and golf magazine world where, if I just make one change, I'm going to be infinitely better. So I think that recognizing that it is a process, that it's going to take time, and there's progressions to that plan. I think it's a really good idea to map that out with a student when you're first starting out. I also like the idea of collecting data up front so that I've got some benchmarks when I'm working with students, so that over time I can also go back to that data, whether it be a video or scoring on the golf course or some technical data that I've got from some technology, so that I can clearly show them how they've made some changes over time and the improvements that we're making. I think that on occasions when students get a little frustrated, things might not be happening as fast as they want, to be able to go back to that data and share that with them and show them the improvements is extremely valuable too. If you don't collect that data up front, then that's not a conversation, it's not ammunition you have down the track.
Yeah, completely agree. So, one of the things that we do, and there's you can do these in elaborate ways and you can do them very, very simple ways, is try and create some sort of, sometimes you can even do it through text message with a student, create conversation with them, but yet keeping some of that data that Derek and Doug are both talking about. So whether it be throwing swing videos in there, whether it be throwing some TrackMan data, or maybe it was just simply the notes from the lesson, something that not only can they go back and recall on, but making sure that you have the right plan and that you stay on task for what you're doing. Because it's pretty easy if you don't have a plan in place for yourself, or at least an idea of where you're trying to take a student. It's too easy when a student comes in to just try and fix the issue of the day. And that goes back into that kind of overall Band-Aid situation. And sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes you got to make sure a player's ready for an event that's tomorrow or in a couple days. But if you can, at best ability, try and create some sort of, I don't want to say long-term, but try and create some sort of plan that you can see a progression for a student. So I think I think anybody that teaches and coaches on a full-time basis, they come up with the priorities of what they think is most important for a player to be able to go out and perform. So we just saw that Doug had it on the board there. So Doug's first priority, and I think Derek and mine's probably the same as well. The first priority is to try and help them strike a golf ball effectively. Well, now you as a coach and as a teacher, you need to have some things in your arsenal that say, hey, when I see a contact issue, I need to look at this, that, and this, or I need to go measure this, so that you can have a confirmation of what's going on. And then I think we would get into some sort of ability. Once they can strike it fairly solidly, we're getting into some sort of ability to be able to actually manage the ball flight. And I'm going to speak for myself here. When I speak of ball flight first, I'm really thinking about how the ball's curving. Can they control the basic direction of the golf ball? And then I think one of the final things that we would look at is a player's ability to, well, control distance. And then obviously with all the data that we're seeing more and more over the past few years, we're starting to realize that being able to hit it farther without losing necessarily control of the golf ball is also a massive, massive benefit. So I think you have to be able to have some sort of process for yourself and some order of importance in what you're looking at with students, so that you can, again, it keeps you on task. It keeps you from going to, I guess, too many kind of unneeded, purely opinion things versus, hey, I need to make a difference in that.
And it comes down to, as a coach, what do you feel like are the fundamentals of golf? I was asked this question a long time ago by a really famous, well-known instructor. And I started, kind of going back to my PGM training and things like that. And before you know it, I'm out there saying gas and grip and aim and alignment and posture and all this kind of BS. But the reality is, over the years, I've kind of, determined that there's three fundamentals in golf. One is that you have to hit the ball first and the ground second. If you can't hit it solid, you can't play this game very well. And then two, you got to be able to control your curve. And it doesn't matter if you fade it or draw it, but you got to have something that's controllable. And three is you got to, have enough distance to play this game and enough control of that distance to be able to, manage the game. I feel like those are kind of the three fundamentals that, I guess I build my foundation of teaching on, is those three things. And as Alan said, number one to me is contact. You got to be able to contact it. Number two is you got to be able to control the curve. And then number three is you got to be able to hit it, at a reasonable distance. And so, I start kind of looking at contact, curve, and distance. They're my three things I'm controlling, and in that order.
Yeah, I'd agree with what Doug said there. When I'm doing those assessments on the course, they're the things that I'm looking at for every shot, and then trying to work it back from there and trying to figure out, okay, well, which one of those do I need to work on based on the order and what's happening out there and what their goals are. So I think the bottom line with this is that you want to have a plan, not only a plan for your student, but a plan for you as a coach as to how you're going to approach each student who comes along to see you. It doesn't mean that every student's going to have the same plan, but you still want to have a checklist that you run through so that you start to put together what that's going to look like long term when you're working with students.
All right, reminder to everyone that's on there, if you have any questions, anything that's on your mind, throw it out there. So what kind of technology do you use, Doug?
So our launch monitor, we use Quad or GC2, which is a 4-sight launch monitor. We feel like that's the best one for indoor use. We also have a optical motion system, which is really cool. It can kind of pick your body up as you move in space. So it allows us to 3D measure what's happening with the body. And then the third piece is just a 2 video system. So for one, we're being able to visualize it. We can quantify not only the body, but quantify the ball flight. So those are our three, big technologies we're using, to assess.
Derek, how about yourself?
So when I'm doing my assessment on the golf course, my technology consists of my iPhone, and I'll take some video of them on the golf course of just a face on and down the line, so that when we get at the end of the day, if I've got a player who's slicing the ball, I want to be able to show them some video so they can see how the club's moving to produce that. Once we get into the lesson, then I upgrade to my iPad. I'm using a much bigger screen, so it's got to be much better than that, as well as a TrackMan. We at the club have been working for some time to try and get a learning center. We haven't quite got there yet, but we're hoping that one day, maybe before I retire, we can get that done so that I can move into the world of Doug and Alan and have some technology to teach with.
Well, we've been pretty lucky, and I'll tell you, I taught most of my coaching was done without technology. I think not until I've had a few launch monitors over the years, but not until not until we got into our own facility. So with Axis, we finally actually got a teaching center to where we could put some things in. So now we have a bunch of stuff, and I'm not saying that it always gets used. It may go months without being used because it's just something that we maybe don't feel like we have to use. But we have TrackMan, we have Flight Scope, we have not Flight Scope, Swing Catalyst, Body Track, Capto, Sand Putt Lab, K-Vest. And like I say, the only one that probably really gets used every single day is probably TrackMan, and then Sand Putt Lab or Capto. Those are often used. I don't think you have to have technology in order to be a great teacher. I think you do need to understand said technology, though. I think going through the process of learning what some of these technologies do, hopefully what they create in your mind is they create a question like, oh, I wonder why they want to measure that. Well, if you can figure out why it's being measured, you can figure out how it applies to your coaching. And then when you can figure that out, you can start figuring out whether it needs to be applied to your students. So you don't have to have technology. Phones are very, very simple to be able to use. But I think understanding what those technologies are measuring is probably pretty important.
I think that conversation of technology brings up a good point too. I've always felt that the programs and the assessments that you do are largely based on the resources you have available. So as a result, so Alan has some technology available, so he's seeing better players come along. I personally find that it's definitely easier to see swing faults with less skilled players. The movements tend to be a little bigger. When I'm working with more skilled players, I'm definitely going to need some technology to be able to see things that my eyes and I can't see on video. So to me, as a result of me, because I don't have that technology, I tend to do more stuff on course, because then I'm doing course management and situational stuff, and I'm working on different shot selections around the golf course. As a result, although I do see some elite players, it'd be safe to say I don't see as many elite players as what Alan and Doug do, because I do find that elite players want to move towards that technology. It doesn't mean that you can't be busy. It doesn't mean that you can't be successful and have a very good living. You know, at Royal Oaks, even though we're a private facility, we've got 8 instructors out, 8 people out there teaching, and 2 of us teach full time. And we are so busy at the moment that I'm sending students to Access when I can't get them on my books, which is pretty much every month. So you're welcome, Alan, by the way. So my point is that be aware of what technology you've got available and what resources you have, and then structure your assessments and your programs around that until you can make changes to the resources you have available.
Awesome.
And I agree. You don't have to use technology in every lesson, but it certainly does help you with benchmarking things, as Derek talked about. Our society, we want to be able to kind of have the Happy Meal golf lesson, to be able to kind of drive around the building and be able to hit it better. So people want results quickly. And I think, for us at GolfTec, we, try to train on how to have a systematic way of evaluating a golf swing, not only from the evaluation side, but also, each individual lesson. We use this military term that is called the OODA loop. OODA is OODA. So OODA stands for first is to observe the ball flight. What's happening to the ball flight? Where is it taking off? Where is it landing? What are the contact patterns? The second O stands for the orientation. So how am I going to orient that lesson? Am I going to orient to working on the contact, or am I going to orient on the curve? Am I going to orient on distance? And then from there, a decision should be made. D stands for decide. Where in the swing am I going to make an adjustment? I'm not going to try to make multiple adjustments, just one little tweak or two, in that. And then after that decision has been made of what to change, maybe that's a sway on the backswing to eliminate. Then the action is, the command or the action that I do in order to change that. Maybe it's putting a pool noodle over their head, or maybe it's commanding them to keep all their weight on their left side. So that OODA loop is one that we train on a lot at GolfTec, to kind of keep some kind of systematic way of doing it. Observe, orient the lesson, decide, and act. And that is a simple way to give a quality golf lesson.
So one of the questions on here I see, so grip, posture, alignment, can we put these in order of importance? I'm going to speak for myself and let the other guys talk after that. No, I would not. To me, fundamental is going back to what we're trying to help that golfer achieve. So fundamentals of being able to play the game well, at least from a swing technical point of view, is they have to contact it well. They have to be able to control curve. They have to be able to control distance and or create distance. So to me, that's fundamental. And then what I'm trying to do within each player is to figure out where is their grip, posture, alignment, where's all this best to be in order to achieve those other three things. So I think those are just aspects. Those are details of being able to try and create the fundamental and that skill needed to be able to go out there and control a golf ball. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with Alan. I must admit that when I first started out teaching, I definitely fell in the category that everybody had to have a similar grip and a similar posture and a similar alignment. But as I've grown over the years and I've been to more education events and I've learned more, I've started to realize that you have a lot of options in those three categories to help players hit shots. So you only have to watch a PGA Tour event every week and you'll see a huge variety of grips, posture, and alignment. And yet all of those players can control the golf ball really well. So I must admit, I'm always starting with where Alan was and the guys were talking earlier about, well, how's the contact? Where's the start line? Can they control curvature? And I'm looking at that. And if those things are functional, then I don't really care what the grip, posture, and alignment look like. If they are having trouble with those, then I'm starting to prioritize what's more important. And then I'm looking at what's the least I can change to make the contact and ball flight functional. Because I think if I can change the least I can change, then I can get the player to get there quicker. Obviously, the more we change, then it's going to be difficult. I'm definitely finding I'm changing less grips these days than I used to. I'm recognizing how difficult it is for players to change grips unless the grip is just completely unfunctional for what we're trying to get to. So if I've got an extremely weak grip and I've got a player who really would like to stop slicing it, then we might have a conversation about altering that slightly. But Richie, I hope that answers your question for you.
And I'll even put this up, this is a chart that kind of shows different style of grips. And I think the important thing is it's not necessary to change the grip, but to understand what comes from which style grip. I mean, obviously, if you have this grip that you see, hopefully you can see it in red, that grip is going to have a slice bias. So I think it's really important to kind of understand, how you set up is going to have a determination of what happens to the golf ball. Or, if you look at these setups, these are different types of setups. One setup might cause a player to hit the ground first or slice. The other one might be more of a draw bias. So I think it's just important on the grip, aim, stance, and alignment to just know what's coming from those type of setups. And that might be what you want to do or what you don't want to do. So I think that's the important one.
So, yeah, I like what Doug's saying there, where you're starting to try and have a better understanding of how things match up. So if you see a stronger grip, what sort of body rotations is that going to require through impact? If you've got weaker grips, what sort of body rotations and release patterns is that going to require to produce functional ball flights? So if a player's got a grip which you think is a little off of orthodox, but they have other moves in their swing which makes it functional, then I'd be really hesitant to mess with that. I don't want to change a player's DNA when then it's functional. If I've got a brand new player who's never held a golf club before, sure, I'm going to go with just plain vanilla with grip, posture, and alignment.
And I think when you get those kind of maybe more of those entry level that haven't had a lot of coaching, maybe haven't had a lot of experience in golf, I agree with you, Derek. I mean, you can kind of go in and put things where you would theoretically want them. But I think once you get that player that's been playing for a while, they're going to show up with something that looks a little bit different in some fashion. And I think like Derek and probably Doug both, I've almost actually come to realize over the years of teaching and coaching, number one, early on in my mind, I had this kind of perfect way for things to be done. And I thought that, okay, if I can get everybody to do that, I'm going to create better players. And the reality of that is it's just not true. You are going to help some players, but you're not going to be able to help enough of them. So as I've kind of progressed along and you get to hang around some really good players that come in and basically not prove you wrong, but prove you wrong that it's not a fundamental that they do certain things. I think that's when I started realizing, hey, as much as I'm trying to make this so-called perfect and put everybody and make sure that this is on plane and all this stuff, I started to realize that as I went and watched and then looked at really, really good players, it didn't mean that they didn't do some of what I thought was correct. They didn't necessarily have to do it all. And I've taken it even farther now to where when I see somebody that comes in that tells me they want to be an elite player, if they tell me they want to be a tour player, if I don't see something unique in there, I actually get scared. Because if I have that player that comes in and everything just looks so super fundamental, now I'm kind of going in my head, okay, number one, they're probably spending way too much time with a video camera just trying to swing perfectly. And then number two, what's unique here? So I challenge everybody, you go take a look at the top 50 players in the world. I don't care if it's LPGA or PGA Tour, albeit LPGA Tour players swing it way fundamentally, or what you would think is all that technical stuff, probably better than the guys. But I would challenge you to look at those top 50 players and find me one player in that top 50 that doesn't have some sort of unique thing in that golf swing. So now I've come to realize that the uniqueness in those things is actually what makes them own it. It's what makes them actually have belief. It's what makes them have the thing. I'm sure a lot of people maybe have heard this story, but, story about Dustin Johnson. Number one, he's way smarter than people give him credit for, even though it may be he's smart knowing what he has to do, and that's why he's great. People don't realize that, they see this wrist at the top and they're going, oh, how come some coach didn't change that? Well, he actually gave a really, really good story of that. Somebody asked him one time, they said, hey, where'd this come from? And, were you taught that? Did you do this? He goes, no, I can swing it. I can swing it like everybody thinks is normal. And he did. He stood up there and kind of made a normal backswing. Everything looked like it was on plane and looked like what everybody probably has in their mind, and hit a beautiful shot out there. So then the person asked him, well, why do you do this? And it was one very, very simple answer. I hit it better. I hit it better. So the job for us when we start having these students is, let's know enough about what's going on so that we do have a process of being able to go through. We can create some plans, but also realizing we don't have to touch everything. Let's touch the important things that are going to help them get better sooner, and remember to not take too much of that uniqueness away from that athlete.
Yeah. And I think it's okay to have a model in your head of what you kind of like and what you prefer as a coach, of what you think works. But then, you have to assess, again, the player in front of you. I mean, if you got DJ and he controls the ball pretty well with that, why would you adjust that? But if you had a 120, player out there in front of you doing those things, well, it might be worth adjusting those kind of things. So I think it's important to kind of recognize, going back to that OODA loop, is you got to be able to observe that ball flight. And if they hit it well with that, then that uniqueness should not come out of their swing. But if they always, let's say you're DJ and you always hit it in the left rough like that, then all of a sudden, well, maybe there needs to be something built in there that can help stop the club face from being so closed. So I think, again, it goes back to observing. If I hit it left all day, I need to put something in that swing that will, control that curve a little bit. And if that's weakening the grip or weakening the wrist position or teaching a way to hold the face open a little bit, that's okay to put in there, because you're now affecting the ball flight. You're not just making a pretty cookie cutter golf swing.
Yep, agreed.
So I'll kind of add on to Ginger's comment there in the chat. She said, my best example is Allie McDonald Ewing, top 30 LPGA Tour player, 10-finger grip. I think anybody that has an opportunity to work with players, and especially juniors, long enough, kind of based on what we're talking about there, you start realizing there's a lot of stuff that doesn't have to be touched. I've got a young guy that I work with, junior in high school now. He's turned himself into a heck of a player. He's turned himself into probably one of the top couple players in the state for his year level. Still 10-finger grip. And the funny part is he's already being recruited and all those things. And I get these phone calls from some of these coaches, and I had a couple of the coaches go, "Hey, how come I noticed Aaron? Sorry, I didn't mean to say his name. I noticed so-and-so is still playing with a 10-finger grip. How come he didn't change it?" I said, "Well, he had the ability to do what we asked him to do when it came to controlling the golf ball. He was progressively getting better. He could handle it out of different situations. So now I'll ask you back, why should I have?" All right, let's see if we got any more in there. Doug, I guess you saw Ginger's comment about being able to.
There was a little bit of a question about physical assessment. Not something we do a ton of at GolfTec, but I guess I'll take this on as saying, don't assume someone can't do something just because they maybe have some kind of physical assessment. I mean, I have players that have fused wrists or elbows that won't retract, or they can't raise their arm above their head. It's okay, and it's good to know that kind of stuff. But I don't want to take an evaluation and for the first lesson, take them through a full body, TPI screen and then say, well, you're not going to be able to do this and this and this because your body is not this way. I'm already kind of creating a barrier of entry that way. And I don't want to do that. I want to see what they can do. And then if I see that there's some things they can't do because of physical limitation, I just work around it. And so I get nervous with people going through too big of physical screens at first, because I don't want to create a barrier of entry, for this sport. It's already hard enough.
So I'll add on to that a little bit, because I must admit I've enjoyed going down that pathway over the years, and I've got some good friends who are strong in that industry, or that side of the industry, I should say. I think the first thing is that if someone's coming along to you for a lesson, they're not coming along to you for an exercise program. So I'd always be a little bit wary of you coming to you because they want you to help them hit better golf shots, not for you to tell them they can't hit better golf shots because they physically can't do something. I always think that with a player, so this is just my own personal approach to it, I always think it's my job to figure out how do I get them to be more functional with the movement patterns and the ability and the physical abilities that they bring to me today. So I've got to figure out a solution. So if I've got a player who doesn't have enough hip rotation through impact because they're tight through the hips, then I've got to adjust their feet and their alignment so they can get the club path working the direction I want. Like, I've got to figure out a solution for them. If I'm seeing them have, if they have some pain associated with their golf swing, that's a completely different story. I'm definitely recommending they go see our fitness director in our sports club at the club. I'm also constantly, as I'm going through that, if I'm seeing some physical limitations in what they're doing and I have a concern that there may possibly show up some pain in the future, I'm constantly checking in with them, making sure that they let me know if they come across any pain, because that's something that, okay, well, physically they can't go where I want them to. The movement solution that I'm giving them is now causing pain. That's a huge red light for me. And we're going to have a conversation about, okay, well, if we're going to continue going that way and you want to hit it like this, then you need to be able to physically do this. And now you're going to go see I'm going to suggest you go see our fitness director. If they give me some resistance in that, then we start having a conversation about, okay, well, if we can't do this, then what we can do is this. Are you comfortable with that ball flight? Maybe the ball can't fly 250. It's only going to fly 220. Now we're going to work on being better inside 100 yards. So to me, it's always, I'm looking at the student and what they want to accomplish and what the options are. I think our job as a coach is always to try and problem solve and to come up with the best solution for the student in front of me. I also find that my students I work with don't practice anywhere near as much as I would like them to, because they just don't have enough time for golf. So to then ask them to find additional time through the week to do a fitness program can be challenging on occasions. So it is definitely a case-by-case basis. If I'm working with elite athletes who are getting ready to play in college or college and wanting to play beyond, typically they're on some sort of program because they need the strength and endurance to be able to do longer sessions and hit balls more often. So I know that's a little bit of a long-winded answer to what was a simple question, but to me, it's such a varied topic based on the student that's in front of you and what they're looking for. I just think that you want to be considering all that stuff.
And I think maybe one of the things that we can do as education for ourselves as teachers and coaches, even if you're not doing it full time, I think one of the things that can help guide whether or not you need to even make those recommendations is to know enough about it yourself. So if you have an opportunity to go hang around a really good chiropractor or a really good physiologist or a biomechanist, somebody that can probably help you understand what the job of certain parts of our body are. I think that's actually something that probably not a lot of people know. If you know what the job and why that joint is the way it looks and the way that it's supposed to move, then you can start, not only is that going to help you start trying to figure out maybe what adjustments have to be made so that you can get them to strike it better, make the ball fly better. But for those players that do come in that maybe have, because that's one of the questions in I think all of our assessments too is, do you have any injuries? Have you had any injuries? Is there anything that bothers you or hurts when you're playing golf? If somebody comes in and they tell me that they have back pain whenever they get done with golf, but yet they haven't had any sort of major traumatic injury to their body that would be trying to cause that. Well, I know in my mind that there's probably emotion going on that is putting a little bit too much stress in a certain part of the body. So I think understanding the body enough to know what the jobs are can help guide your instruction. And then if it just seems above your pay grade, which a lot of the times it is, once it gets to a certain point of trying to alleviate and try and fix maybe some physical issues, well, then you also have to have enough of a network for yourself so that you can defer those to the other people and to the experts so that they can kind of take it over. I know Derek's got one of the best in the industry when it comes to Pam Owens out there at this facility. So she's awesome. And I can tell you, even for those that are wanting to learn more, Pam's pretty open about trying to help people learn. So if somebody wanted to come out there and just have a conversation of, hey, what does it mean to be able to do this? I know she'd be one of them that'd be willing to do it, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, Pam is awesome.
All right. You guys have anything else that you want to add to it? Or we want to let Scott kind of come in and have a little bit of I think he's got something he wants to say. Paul, what was the question there, Paul? How many lessons have you, the presenters, taken for your own game in the last year? If you have, does this change some teaching methods or refine teaching ideas? Well, I'll speak at that one real quickly. Is I personally, I still try to compete, even if it's just at our section level. And I do that solely so that I can always remember how hard it is. I don't ever want to have a player or tell a player to go do something or work on something that I wouldn't myself at least feel comfortable that I could take to the golf course and at least attempt to try and perform at it. So as far as lessons go, I think I'm in a lucky situation. I get to teach along 3 other great coaches and Ben Wellman, EJ Kim, and Sean McEwen. So I have them come in all the time and try and take a look at things from me, and we do for each other. So yes, I know I still do, and I still try to keep myself just enough into the playing side of it so that I can realize how hard it is and kind of the mentality that goes along with it. How about you other guys?
I have not had a lesson in I don't know how long. I'm flat out finding time to hit enough golf balls just to keep my game in enough shape to be able to do presentations for my students. Things are pretty busy, which I'm very grateful for. I find that in changing my teaching methods and refining my teaching ideas, I try to do as much education as I can. So I'll do a number of seminars a year, whether they be webinars or in-person stuff. And I've got some close friends in the industry who are solid teachers as well that I bounce ideas off as well. And I find that that's the way that I'm growing my teaching knowledge more than hitting balls myself.
I would say that I'm in the same boat as Alan, is that we have a team here. And so we're constantly getting in the bay and messing around with certain things and challenging ideas. I think that's the great thing when you do have a team of instructors, is that you're always challenging each other's ideas and methods, just to see, make each other stronger. Man, I've taken a number of short game lessons. If you know me, my short game is not the greatest thing in the world. So I've always kind of just been experimenting with that. But I think back to Derek's idea of just constantly learning is maybe I have preferences the way I teach, but I always try to challenge those preferences by going and spending time with those that believe different than I do, just so that I can kind of continue to either sharpen my skill set, and not so much to disprove them, but just to kind of understand how they're accomplishing what they're trying to accomplish. And that way I kind of go, you know what, I can take a few things away from that, or I can take a few things away from this. And then that way I have kind of nuggets, that I can take away that, can continue to help me when, I'm in the bay with a student.
Hey, Richie, why don't you, if your microphone works, why don't you come on right quick and elaborate on that question?
Hey, Alan, what's going on? How are you guys?
Doing good.
Good. Over here at San Antonio Country Club, we see, it's a very large family atmosphere, and we tend to see quite a few, juniors coming up, whether it's our sneakers and cleats class, that's from ages 4 to 6. And then also we have our after school team golf program, which is ages 7 through 12. And just trying to find out unique ways to get new juniors, that don't play much golf, but still getting them started down the right path. Having fun is a huge priority, but what other things can we do to just get them started down the right path?
I think Derek would be the best one to probably answer this one, seeing as he's at a private club just like you. And I know he's got some pretty awesome junior programs he runs.
Thanks, Alan. Richie, it sounds like you're doing a lot of good stuff already, which is awesome. So the program that we decided to go with was Operation 36. We've got, across adults and juniors, we're in our fall semester at the moment. We've got 25 classes a week across 120 students. If you're talking juniors specifically, I really think that that's probably an hour presentation on its own with some people on here who are doing juniors. But to give you a couple of quick things, I would be making sure you're getting the kids on the golf course. I think that's important. The thing that I've liked about Operation 36 is that they have benchmarks that the players have to achieve in scoring 36 or less from 25 yards before they can graduate to 50 and then 100. And we do matches every 2 weeks on the golf course. So we've found that that's been very motivational for them. So I think getting them on the golf course is good. I've also found that if we're talking juniors specifically, if you can keep them in groups where they develop some friendships is good. So any of the team events, whether you do parent-child events, like I said, I think this is a great question, but one that could take a lot of time to answer in some detail. Like I said, I'm not quite sure where to go, just because there's so many different ways you can go with this. But one of the things, like I said, I would be aware of is trying to get the players on the golf course as soon as possible. And if that means playing from shorter yardages so you can get them around in a reasonable time and they're not having too many shots on each hole, that would be one thing that I would definitely be considering putting in your program if you haven't done so already.
I think the idea for being able to create activity, whether it's junior or adult, I think if that's where you're trying to go, I think you just need to have some programming out there, and realizing that in the beginning, some of that programming may not immediately take off, if you will, kind of like what we're doing here. I mean, how many golf professionals are in our section, but yet we only see that there's 17 people that are on this Zoom call, but it's got to start somewhere. So I think if you can just get out there, create some programming, make sure that you're creating the right atmosphere and kind of maybe for the target audience, which means if you want kids involved, you got to make it to where it's got a social aspect so that they can hang out with other kids, and you've got to make sure that you make it fun. I can tell you one of the people that I know is an absolute genius at it, and my guess is we'll have her speaking on here at some point about it, would be Christy Longfield. Again, private club, trying to make sure that she's creating an atmosphere, and and the right stuff to just make kids fall in love with being at the golf course and fall in love with, hanging out. And the whole idea of trying to get a kid focused on trying to get better, they're not worried about getting better at a certain when they're first getting in there. They just want to go have some fun. And then at some point they see some things going pretty well, and then they start trying to figure out how to get better. So I think the first thing is make it fun, just create programming and keep throwing it out there. Even if at first they don't grab a hold of it, at some point they're going to go, hey, you know what? I keep seeing that program, and I'd really like to get involved with it. And then everybody that I've ever heard that's done the Op 36 stuff always has great feedback from everything there.
Awesome. Thanks, Derek and Alan. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You got it. All right. So I don't see any more questions on there as of right now. So let's we'll kind of end Derek, Doug, and myself's kind of speaking here. We'll let Scott Archer come in, talk about maybe the teaching and coaching summit. And then if anybody else has any more questions, either I would say reach out to the section, email Scott Archer if you need any of our contact information or anybody else that's on here. I mean, that's all information that you can grab a hold of. And the other thing, Scott just put his email on there for you. The other thing that we're also hoping to see in this is please get your other staff involved with these education calls, the education Zoom calls, whoever, as long as they're affiliated with the LPGA or PGA, we want them involved in it. The hope here is that maybe one of you have heard something that's kind of cool that you like, and maybe you reach out to one of us. You reach out to Doug and go, hey, you know what? I've always wanted to kind of move more into an indoor setting. Well, what better guy to hang out with than the one that is really good at it and has been doing it? For those of you that are at private clubs and you're trying to figure out a way to create some programming, I am probably not the person you'd want to go talk to, but Derek is the best one. So use the resources in front of you and use the people in our section. I don't know of anybody in our section that doesn't want to help another golf professional. Go hang out, phone, in person, whatever. Let's get involved.
And part of this group was designed to be able to first, just get on here and say, this is who I am, and here's a couple little bullet points. But this group that we've kind of started to create that's going to speak is also in the idea that they're open to, helping the other golf professionals around. So, if we're on these calls and things like that, know that we're available, for phone calls or text messages or things like that to be able to, help you with your craft.
All right, Scott, jump on in.
All right, Alan, Doug, Derek, first off, thank you all for this morning and for some fantastic education for our PGA members and associates. Love seeing everyone come together and share some ideas, and a great environment here for some good conversation and involvement. In your chat there, you'll see my email. Please feel free to email me with anything you might have, any education questions. I'm also including my direct office line right there. Also in your chat, Ginger Brown Lim just brought up, we've got a Collegiate Golf Connections webinar about recruiting for college. This is a free webinar, and I included the link. And then Monday, November 8th, we've got our Coaching and Teaching Summit presented by Ping and Super Speed Golf at Sterling Country Club at Houston National. I've included the registration link for that in the chat. We're really excited. We're going to have keynote speaker Jim McClain, obviously a top 100 instructor, top 3 teacher, and national winner. We're going to have PGA of America presenting on ADM and PGA.coach. We've got Ted Logan, the director of the American Development Model, coming in. Dr. Lindsay Mitchell, a performance psychologist for the PAVE group, is going to be doing a mental game. We'll have a club fitting session, and then Chuck Cook, another teacher of the year, PGA of America, doing a full swing on the range session, so we can get kind of a glimpse into his mind and how he conducts a lesson. So we're looking forward to a great day of education there. Please jump on to STPGA.com to get registered. Looking forward to the next one of these on November 22nd. I'll have that page live for registration here by the end of next week. Alan, I'll pass it back over to you.
Very good. All right. Thanks, Scott. Derek, Doug, appreciate your time this morning. Great stuff. Everybody that was on the call today, really appreciate everybody being there. Love the idea that people are trying to figure out how to get better and be better. Have some fun with it. See you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Great job.